Thanks everybody for coming in. Who's excited for the long weekend? I know I am. I am.
You get to stay at home again.
No, but it's going to be beautiful, I hear, right up here?
Yeah.
All right, I haven't done one of these in a while because everything was very fluid for a long time. We're going to do questions and answers at the end because I have some things I want to talk to you about today, and specifically I want to talk about the financial condition of Novanni because we're at a pivot point, we're at a turning point. It's a positive turning point, and I want to bring you up to speed because I know some of you here are new, so you haven't had the journey, but those of you that have been here since I met you in June of 2020 when I bought the company, I've been pretty forthright, I think, in the struggles and my priorities in getting this company turned around. So here's some of the payoff, I think. You know, this is going to be boring financial stuff, and so as I always do, I try to put this into more of a personal example for you so you can understand. So I want you to picture yourself, I shouldn't say so you can understand, but just to make it more human than business. I want you to picture yourself personally with, say, a $30,000 after-tax income, just making up numbers. And with that, you eat and you pay your mortgage and you fund your lifestyle. And if you're super careful, you can put a little bit away every month and you live your life, right? You're not wealthy, but everything's stable, everything's good. Except for whatever reason, you ran up on several credit cards, about $150,000 of credit card debt, right? A lot of people are nodding their head. And that credit card debt's accruing interest at 20%. And if you think about the math, you go, holy crap, that's $30,000 of interest every year, and I make $30,000 of after-tax income. Well, you, my friend, are in trouble, right? So you stop paying your credit cards, then the debt goes up, and then you have more interest on the debt. It becomes this vicious cycle. You get a bad credit rating, you're not happy, you feel weighed down, maybe you're angry and lashing out at your partner or your friends. And now you got a problem beyond just the cash flow. Now you got a major expenditure coming up. Your car just broke down, you can't get to work, and you need a new car. Do you think the bank's going to finance that car for you? Right? With your credit rating and this problem, or you need a new roof on your house, do you think you can get that financed? Not going to happen. Think about that. That is where, that picture, business-wise, is where Novanni was last June, okay? And very similar. This is a way for me to try and explain things without disclosing actual numbers of a bunch of stuff, okay? Just to give you the feeling of it. So since then, when I came in, we got rid of a lot of what I would consider to be top-heavy expenses. You guys know that we actually invested more into the hourly labor. We haven't done the same on the salary yet, but we're going to be reviewing that this year, and we'll be reviewing hourly again this year. But we got rid of the top-heavy. We got rid of a couple of executive salaries. We got rid of payments out to shareholders. We got rid of a lot of interest expense and payments to related companies. And all of that has a major impact on the income of this business. We also attacked the debt problem of the Novanni head on. I've talked to you about the restructuring process that we went through. And in that, which is done, by the way, which is kind of one of the reasons we're at a pivot point right now, we took, I can say this number because it's publicly available information when you go through a restructuring process. We took millions of dollars of debt, and we turned it into $200,000 with creditor approval. They all voted. Everybody except the next door neighbor voted yes. And the next door neighbor, his claim is only worth $1, so it wasn't really a significant no, literally $1. So we've turned it into $200,000, and we've already paid that $200,000. So all of the supplier debt, the unsecured debt, everything that's not a bank, that existed as of December 24th when we filed for restructuring, is already done. It's already paid for. It's over with. Okay, that's like you taking your $150,000 of credit card debt and turning it into $15,000, right? It was a major, significant restructuring. And I know that some of you are thinking, wow, that's pretty harsh on the suppliers. for example, the old suppliers from years ago that didn't get paid, and that's true. And that's true, but when I came in here, I told you that my priority and my job is to take the hard decisions to save jobs, okay? And that's what we did. If you had that credit card debt of $150,000 and you didn't do something about it, you're screwed. You're not gonna survive. Novanni was not going to survive, okay, last June. That problem has been fixed. Where does that leave us? I don't want to talk real numbers, but I'll talk about some ratios. And for those of you listening on the show, anybody who's interested in business, managing your business with ratios is a stupid thing to do. But it does give some feel for where we're at so that you can understand. First thing I want to talk about is what's called a current ratio, which is basically everything that you're going to turn into cash in the next year, which is cash that you already have, accounts receivable, and inventory. Okay, that's all going to turn into cash in a year, divided by everything you have to pay in a year, which is basically your supplier and anything you got to pay the bank in the next year. And if you're running a business, you want to look at that ratio. If you're a banker, you want to look at that ratio. And what you want is a ratio, a minimum of like 1.2 times to 1.5 times. That means, hypothetically, you have $1 million of stuff that you have to pay in the next year, payables. Well, then you would have $1.2 million or $1.5 million in stuff that turns into cash, like receivables and inventory, okay? That's what you want. Now, when I met Novanni, the current ratio was negative. It was very negative. And what I mean by negative is, it wasn't literally negative. It was below the 1.2 to 1.5, way below that, okay? Meaning we owed more money in the next year than we were going to collect. Simple as that. It's not a good place to be. Our current ratio today is not 1.2. It's not 1.5. Our current ratio today, roughly speaking, is about 35 to 1. I've never seen a company with a 35 to 1 current ratio. We basically have no payables. We basically don't owe anybody any money. I'll tell you, because it's a hard number, for the size of this company, we're not a huge business, but we're a good mid-sized business. We literally owe less than $100,000 to our suppliers on our payables list today. Okay, why? Because we restructured all the back stuff, and we've already paid it. And while we were restructuring, we didn't accept we didn't take much credit from suppliers. Okay, we paid everything cash or COD. Okay, we don't owe people money anymore of any significant. 35 to 1, it's a crazy number. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, that doesn't feel right because of all the phone calls and we can't get supplies sometimes. That's no longer about our credit rating. It's no longer about our debt load. At this point, it's just systems and education, telling the suppliers where we're at, getting the accounting up to date on this particular issue, and getting checks out the door. It'll just take care of itself over time. The hard work is done. Second ratio I want to talk about is debt to equity. Okay, 2 ways to finance a business. One is you borrow money from somebody, being a bank or your suppliers. And the second is the shareholders invest. Or more specifically, they don't take out the money that the company earned. They just leave it in the company, okay? And that creates equity, all right? Debt, you gotta pay back. Equity, you don't have to pay back. Well, if you were a banker or a business owner, you would want a debt to equity ratio of say 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 at the maximum. Meaning if you had $1 million of equity, you wouldn't want your debt to be more than 4 million. That would be pretty aggressive. And you're saying to yourself, well, holy smokes, that's a lot of debt, right? But think about when you buy a house, what do? You put 10% down and you borrow 90%, okay? That's a 9 to 1 debt to equity ratio. In business, if you're a banker and you see a company that's 4 to 1, you say, I don't want to lend you any more money. Like 4 to 1, we've kind of maxed out, okay? Sometimes in a hot economy, it goes to 5, but in that range, all right? When I met Novanni a year ago, the equity was negative. There was none. You cannot divide a whole number by a negative number and come out with a positive number. You couldn't even mathematically do the ratio. It didn't make any sense, okay? Today, our debt to equity ratio is 0.5 to 1. Not 5 to 1, 0.5 to 1. Again, we have positive equity and we have virtually no debt. We've got virtually no payable. We've got the less than 100,000 payables. We have a little bit of a term loan on our equipment back there. That's it. That's it. That's all we've got. By any financial measure, Novanni is pretty healthy right now. Okay, and that's been a year of financial work and turnaround. When I met you, I said, you know, we bought this company, and the accounting, you know, was out of date. It hadn't been done for months and months and months and months. We didn't have good information. Everything was a mess. And the people here that were working on accounting were doing their best to fill in the gaps and getting stuff input into the accounting system, and they did a terrific job holding that together. But the truth of the matter is the controller left. I don't know how long ago he left, but the controller left, and there was no controller on site to do, you know, the things that needed to be done. And today, the accounting records are much better than they were. They're still not awesome. The system's still not great. We have a lot more work to do, but we're starting to get real financial information that I can rely on, that Frank can rely on, that we can help Cliff with, and make management decisions. So that's a huge improvement for me, and it remains true to this day, as I've told you before, that every single month, starting in July 2020, because we bought this the end of June 2020, Novanni has been profitable. And now I'm getting financial reports on a monthly basis, more or less mid-month, which is great. And not only have we been profitable every single month, but the months of March and April 2021, so just passed, were the most profitable months in the history of Novanni ever, according to Frank. Is that true, Frank?
I think so, yeah.
Ever. All right. So, our balance sheet looks great. We got a big raise, right? We don't got the credit card debt anymore. We got a big raise, and things are good. So what are we going to do with all that financial success? That's a good question, right? Well, for starters, we need to be conservative. Our track record of success here is really short. So we need to save up in case something goes wrong, and keep some money in the bank and get healthier for the rainy day. Also, profit, just because we're making a bunch of money, that's not cash flow. Ironically, what happens is when you make money, when you make profit, it costs you money in the short term because your receivables go up, your inventory goes up. And so I will tell you at a personal level that I grossly underestimated the cash flow needs of this company in starting November, December, January, February, like it's really sucked. And now that's turning around. And so cash flow is not profit. So we're just kind of working out of where we were. But beyond that, eventually the profit comes home to roost and you start putting money in the bank. And what are we able to do? This is remember in the personal example I gave you, you had your car broke down. Well, now we got a great balance sheet. We're making money, we got a raise. Now we can spend that money slowly and conservatively, but we can look at capital expenditures, meaning we can look at equipment maintenance. I can talk to Cliff about his wish list for the back. We can look at new equipment. Okay, we can look at HR initiatives like training, performance reviews, all that sort of stuff. All right. So over time, the rest of this fiscal year, the next fiscal year, we'll be working on that. And that's what a normal company ought to be doing. That Novanni hadn't been able to do that stuff for
4 years, probably.
4 years. We're back. We're back. Okay. So I told you when I first met you, those that were here, that I buy troubled companies with a mission of saving jobs and creating value at the same time. All right. And I told you all of this information today to let you know that last June, the jobs here were at severe risk, and today they're not. They're just not. We're stable, we're healthy, we're doing great, and we're in good financial shape, which means stability, which means we don't have that risk. I do want to say that's not on me, that's on you. You guys showed up and gals showed up every day. You did your work, you kept your heads down, you've performed. I didn't save these jobs, you saved your jobs. Congratulations, it's been a win so far, okay? All right, that doesn't mean that we don't have, that everything's been rosy and that we don't have headwinds. Okay, our primary problem today is commodity supply, meaning steel. There is and this is not just a Novanni issue, there's a global shortage of steel. So if you're in the back and you see we have no inventory, you're thinking to yourself, well, they can't get supply, what's going on? Okay, it's not us. It's not us. There's just no steel in the world. And it's more of a North American issue. In COVID, during the pandemic, all of the steel mills cut their capacity, they cut their output, and then you combine that with tariffs, particularly in the US, but also it impacts all of North America. The tariffs that were intended to limit, particularly Asian, I suppose, imports at a low cost to spur on the domestic industry. So at the same time they're cutting down, you're also cutting down on foreign steel, and then demand skyrockets. Infrastructure, everybody's working on their home, people are buying cars now, and so you got this whole demand-supply imbalance that's expected to continue into Q1, Q2, 2022, okay? We're short, the whole globe is short on steel. Novanni is a small fish in the big sea of steel. We're a really small fish on the global scale, okay? So we don't have the locked-in annual contracts. We don't have the sway with the steel suppliers to cut the line. And so it's a struggle. It's a struggle. And we have, the good news is that we have significant purchases that should be hitting us first or second week of July, Frank. And by then, so starting the first or second week of July, we should be normalized on steel. You're hedging on that?
Yeah, I think so.
80% we should be normalized on steel, okay? And so if something goes, I don't know that something's not gonna change. Frank has been spending every day calling all over the world trying to find 10,000 pounds for this week or 20,000 pounds for this week of frankly any gauge he can get his hands on, okay? And for 4 weeks now, I've been hearing we're gonna run out of steel this week, and then magically he finds 20,000 pounds and we got a little bit to produce, okay? We are gonna have a rough 6 to 7 weeks between today and early July, okay? I don't know that we're gonna run out of steel, but we might run out of steel during that process. Fair to say, Frank? Okay. If we do run out of steel, what do we do? I told you when I first met you, because we were back in the early days of COVID, I told you that when a leader is faced with scarcity, they have to have really damn clear priorities. Because the entire definition of scarcity is that you can't have everything you want. So you need to know what you want and prioritize. And I told you that my 3 priorities during COVID were, number 1, that everybody who works for me is able to pay their rent to the best of my ability, to buy their food to the best of my ability. Doesn't 100% have to be on the company, but if there's government, if we have to lay people off, which we never did, by the way, in any of my companies, but if we had to, there was a government program that we could help people transition to, and that was a priority. Priority number 2 was the mental health during COVID of everybody that worked for me. And what does that mean? You're faced with uncertainty, you're faced with you're just fearful of a lack of stability and the chaos created by the COVID issue. And so how can an employer help that? How can a leader help that? Over-communicate, whether you like it or not. Try to give you our thinking as to what we're doing, and try to eliminate some of the instability in your lives, okay? So that was a priority. And I told you my 3rd priority is, while everybody's frozen with fear, while all of our competition is frozen with fear and not making decisions, we will double down and look to leapfrog our competition and our business in a time of chaos, okay? And that's been hugely successful throughout every business that we own. And I think you can see that in Novanni, based on what I just told you today. I mean, we did all this stuff during the pandemic. By the way, I didn't tell you back on the making money side, I won't give you the actual number, but the revenue run rate. What is a run rate? It means you look at, okay, here's what we did the last few months, multiply times 12, basically, right? You take an average and multiply it times 12 and just say, okay, here's what I project we're gonna do for the year. Our revenue run rate today is double what it was last June. Double, right? That's just massive. Now, in fairness to last June, that was the heart of COVID, when the Home Depots of the world were sort of shut down. Nobody knew what was going on. So that's a bit of an artificial gain, but it's part of it is artificial, but a lot of it is real and substantial. So, anyways, leapfrog the competition. My priorities have not changed. If we run out of steel, I have the same priorities. Okay, making sure people are getting their income so they can do what they need to do in their lives. The mental health, in other words, removing the stress and leapfrogging the competition. So how does that apply to our mini 6 to 7 week issue? Okay, it applies like this. If we run out of steel, our priorities will be to maintain, number one, to maintain full-time employment of everybody. That's a priority. It's not a promise, it's a priority, okay? How will we do that? If we run out of steel, which I don't know that we're going to run out of steel, but if we do, how are we gonna do that? We're gonna focus on things like training. Deneen, we got a lot of training to do, right? Okay, we're gonna focus on maintenance, sanitation, and we may be asking for some vacation time in that period to help out. Did I miss anything, Cliff or Frank, on the things that we're gonna focus on? That is a contingency in case we run out of steel, which again, I don't know to be true, but the answer to it from my perspective is not layoffs, it's not 4-day weeks, it's not any of that stuff, okay? It's a 6 to 7 week period, we'll get through it. If this is an opportunity for us to crank through 2 weeks, I'm just making that up, but 2 weeks of training or 2 weeks of spiffing things up, that's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do so that we come out the other side stronger. We are not looking to cut back hours like so many other manufacturers in Ontario. I think you all see that. Again, that's not a promise, but that's my priority. I'm gonna fight to avoid that, and if that changes, I don't expect it will change. If I were to put odds on us having to cut back, I would say it's like 10%. It's a small risk, just because the time period is so short. This isn't a 2-year COVID thing, right? We can afford to get through this. And so I think it's a low risk, but if that changes, you're gonna hear it from me first, okay? You won't be surprised by it, you're gonna hear it from me, but I don't think it's gonna happen. We'll see where we get to. Okay, that's what I wanted to say today. Frank and Cliff, do you want to jump in on that before the Q&A, or do you have anything to comment? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you touched on one point that I was bringing up, generally, the fact that over here they do good work with materials here. We put things up in a timely fashion, and we get the job done when the stuff's here, and when it's not here, we try to deal with it best we can.
Are you using our slow time for cross-training?
I'm trying to attempt to get some cross-training. I have discussed that with some of the departments already, that there are departments where I want all the staff that are in that department to learn everybody's job in that unit, so we can have the flexibility moving staff around when we have a shortage of staff.
Perfect, perfect. All right, Q&A. Questions, comments? Anyone? Come on, we were so lively last time. Go ahead.
I was wondering, I know...
Louder, please, with the mask. It's hard to...
In the past, I've heard, in last place I've worked at, we've had a yearly cost of living adjustment. I know talking to people who work here for a while, that besides the raise we got in the fall, it's kind of been lacking. And sometimes people will be told, you're not getting it because you already make enough.
Okay, so the question was, for those that couldn't hear it, will there be more hourly, right? Or just in general raises, cost of living adjustments, that sort of stuff, or do you make enough already? That was. I don't think you make enough already. I would love it for you guys to be, everyone here, to be rich and famous, because we're making so much damn money that we're able to share it. I have no philosophical issue with that whatsoever. We did the $2, correct me if I'm wrong, but the $2 hour raise, when was that? Everybody? August, September, October?
August.
August?
I think so.
August. We need to do a full HR review now that this restructuring process is over. We'll be doing something. I have no idea what that is. Okay. But we are doing something this year.
I know another place I used to work at, Tier W, which is in Midland, they do it every year based off just what the government puts out.
No. So we will not be doing a cost of living adjustment. Okay. We're going to look at part of the reason for the $2 in my way of thinking is I didn't want us to be the bottom of the barrel compensation employer. Okay, not the bottom of the barrel quality, but just the low payer on the street. We couldn't justify being the high payer on the street back when we were in such financial trouble, but we could justify not being the low payer. So my hope is that we're sort of in the middle at this point. I don't know that to be true, but the point of this was to get us more to the middle. And I think the evidence of whether that's true or not is in our recruiting efforts. Are we able to hire new people at the pay ranges that we have? So that's number one. I'm going to be reviewing that with Deneen and with Frank and with Cliff. And I see that the reason I fought against merit-based raises last August is because it wasn't about you individually. It wasn't about you individually. It was about who we are as an employer, okay? And I don't know that we're done on that. Maybe we are, but I don't know. And then the second thing we're gonna look at is merit-based, okay? And I don't know how to define that either, okay? But we'll be looking at that. But what we won't be doing is just an across-the-board COLA that's not tied, that's tied to some sort of government inflation stat. That's not interesting to me. Other questions, comments?
Are we getting an in-house accountant?
Yes.
Another controller, yeah.
Yeah, well, so what I tried to do is handle most of this from Toronto with my accounting staff, but they're not built as a system to be a permanent controller of an organization like this.
Right.
So Deneen drafted 2 job ads for me yesterday, which I haven't read yet, but one of them is going to be a clerk-ish type person because we just need more data entry with our front office staff. And the second would be, I wouldn't say a controller as much as an accounting manager. So a qualified person, qualified not being a generic term, but a specific accountant designation. Below a controller level, but could grow, okay? So, and if we take that load off the lit, who's our sort of de facto designated controller, it's gonna help a lot. It's gonna be more local. Because one of the things that we don't do, like now that we have a base of our accounting system fixed up, now we need to do deep dives into certain accounts. Cliff is going to be looking for management accounting type information, cost control type information. That's impossible to do remotely. So the answer is yes. Anything else? Going once, going twice, we're done. Thanks everybody. I hope that was taken with some positivity today.